There's been a lot of discussion about how the arrest and prosecution of Nicolas Maduro violates head of state immunity. It's a term you may have heard a lot lately, but it's important to know that as a practical matter, now that Maduro is on American soil, whatever international law has to say about this takes a back seat to how US law deals with head of state immunity. And it turns out US courts have a much different way of looking at this principle.
The United States also recognizes the concept of sovereign immunity and that the head of state is immune from prosecution. There is an important caveat, though. That immunity only applies to the head of state as recognized by the United States State Department. And here, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the State Department do not recognize Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. So if you read the indictment, it says that he's the illegitimate ruler of Venezuela. That's why he can be prosecuted. Many critics say that this is a big legal loophole. They may be right, but this is the challenge. The courts have ruled that this is a political question and not one that is reviewable by the judiciary or Congress. So whatever decision the State Department makes and the executive branch, that can't be reviewed by the courts.
But this won't stop Maduro's defense from using head of state immunity to try to get the judge to throw out this case. Head of state immunity, the legality of Maduro's kidnapping, which Maduro's lawyer referred to not as a US law enforcement action, but a military operation which would make Maduro a prisoner of war, which he claimed to be at his arraignment. Now, in the Noriega case, none of this helped stop Noriega's prosecution, but in this case, there is one wild card: Judge Alvin Hellerstein.
Normally, I would say it is very unrealistic that a judge would dismiss this type of case, given how much international attention it has received. However, the judge in this case, Judge Hellerstein, is 92 years old. He's reportedly stubborn, and he can make decisions based on his own view of the facts and the law.
The likely scenario, though, is that this case does move forward, and at least on paper, according to US law, Maduro's case should be decided as if he were a run-of-the-mill criminal defendant, which means it's all about the government's evidence. So what about that?
I do think the outcome in this case is inevitable. You don't swing in a case like this and miss, because it will be extraordinarily embarrassing for not just the DOJ, but the United States as a whole. So I do believe the Department of Justice believes it has the evidence to convict Maduro, Flores, and the other people involved in this case.
But the wider significance of Maduro's capture and prosecution violating international law conventions won't be seen in that courtroom in New York. It will be on the world stage. This kind of direct violation of international law by a global power like the US can set off a kind of domino effect from other countries.
If we start to see those rules degraded systematically and comprehensively, then the impact will be that these rules start to be less effective. And if we think about examples of where this kind of phenomenon is occurring, one is in the aftermath of 9/11, when the United States significantly expanded executive power domestically, surveillance power, and various forms of authority in response to the perception of a security imperative. A decade after 9/11, Human Rights Watch counted around 140 states as having passed new counterterrorism laws. Not all of those were derivative of the United States specifically, but they were all drawing on one another to expand police powers, suppress freedom of speech, assembly and association, enhance surveillance powers, and expand executive authority more generally.
Maduro and federal prosecutors will be back in court in March, so we will learn more about how head of state immunity will factor into this case then.